So I've owned a Fujifilm X100VI for about 6 weeks now, and I was lucky enough to get it pretty early on and also use it on a couple of trips, mainly as a hybrid camera for both photo and video, for things like travel, day-to-day, street photography and portraits. So after the time that I've spent with the camera, I figured rather than doing my usual review, I put together a bit of a list of 5 pros and 5 cons that I've experienced in my time with the Fuji X100VI. So let's get right into it. Pro number 1 is that the Fujifilm X100VI is now a great hybrid camera. I've been a long time owner of the Fujifilm X100V, and although I loved that camera, it was pretty much a photo only camera to me. I really didn't use the video side at all because it only recorded in 8-bit and it had a pretty heavy time limit on the clips you could record. And with the X100VI, most of those issues are now solved. But don't get me wrong, this is still a photo first camera for me. I just love the colors and rendering coming out of this camera for capturing my life and travels. And the X100VI feels mostly like a continuation of all the things I loved about the X100V in terms of the photos coming out of this camera. The X100VI just has this unique way of capturing mundane everyday scenes and somehow making them interesting, mainly down to the in-camera processing that you can do, and it's something that I just don't get from any other camera I own. But this is now a more capable hybrid camera than ever. The camera really has you covered for high quality video too, which is something we'll get on to later in the video, but with the removal of those record limits, we've got 10-bit footage now, we've got built-in IBIS, we have F-Log2, we've now got a really capable video camera too, along with it being an awesome photo camera. This is the first X100 camera that genuinely has you covered for both photo and video in my opinion, with very few compromises in either. And to be honest, it's probably the best fixed lens travel hybrid camera on the market right now when you take into account the cost. When using the X100V, if I was capturing photos, I'd never think to myself to just quickly throw it into movie mode and capture some clips. But with the X100VI, I do, because the quality is just so good that when I do that, I don't feel like I'm missing out on any quality in any way up against my full frame cameras. And that just makes this such a valuable camera to own for travel in my opinion. Pro number 2 is the video image quality, and this deserves an entire section on its own because I've seen some huge improvements in the 6 over the X100V. I touched on a few earlier. We now have 10-bit, but we've also got 6K resolution. We've got the IBIS, we've got no record limits, and a new F-Log2 color profile. To say that I've been blown away by the video quality from this little camera really is an understatement. I just love the look of the footage coming out of this camera now using F-Log2. The footage looks so organic, yet it's still sharp and with much improved dynamic range over the X100V with a beautiful highlight roll-off. Again, I would find myself with the X100VI taking a few photos and just throwing it into movie mode, activating that ND filter and capturing some video clips. The kind of clips that if I had brought the X100V, I would have never have captured because I would have just thought to myself, what is the point? Autofocus is decent in video and the addition of IBIS is certainly welcome, although far from game-changing in this camera. Overall, I was extremely impressed with the video image quality coming out of this camera. So much so that it actually has me interested in trying out some of Fujifilm's other cameras for video, such as the X-H2S. And pro number 3 is the new film simulation Reala Ace. And I'm a big fan of this new film simulation that has been added into the Fujifilm X100VI. It's just very versatile with its look lying somewhere in between classic chrome and classic negative. It adds a subtle golden tone to everyday scenes and landscapes whilst giving a really flattering look to portraits as well. And it also gives you beautiful skin tones. This is now my favourite simulation by far for capturing most scenes straight out of camera. It just seems to work for me in most scenes and scenarios compared to other film simulations. Now you don't get this in many other Fujifilm cameras right now, but it is just a software thing at the end of the day, so Fujifilm could add this to other cameras if they want to, so hopefully we do see that in the future. Pro number 4 is the X100VI's low light capabilities. And this applies to both photo and video modes. This camera is really capable in low light situations. ISO performance in this camera is excellent all the way up to ISO 6400 in photo, where it remains really clean, which I think is a really important thing in a camera like this that's really popular among street photographers. And nighttime is one of my favorite times to get out there and get shots. The addition of IBIS also really helps in this area because it allows you to keep your ISO much lower by having much longer shutter speeds and being able to take these shots handheld. And in video again, I was really impressed with the performance of this camera right up until 12,800 ISO. And even when there is noise, it's rendered nicely and you get just in general really usable footage out of this tiny camera at very high ISOs. And to be honest, in terms of low light performance, it keeps right up with my full frame cameras. Pro number 5, the final pro, is the aesthetics and usability of the Fujifilm X100VI. Now let's face it, I genuinely feel that a large part of this camera's appeal, its popularity and its hype comes down to its aesthetics. And I get it, I love how this camera looks. It's a conversation starter and it's really fun to buy accessories for. And in general, it's actually really fun to use too thanks to its tactile dials. It just feels really engaging to shoot with this camera. This may not seem like a big deal, but with my Canon R5 for example, I'm not bringing that camera everywhere with me. But with this camera, I will bring it with me. Not only does the fun, engaging experience of using this camera encourage me to just get out and shoot, but the fact that this is so small and compact yet still capable for photo and video now means I'm bringing it along to more situations where the full frame cameras would get left at home, and it still gives me great results. There's been many occasions where simply down to the fact that this camera is so easy to just bring along, throw in a backpack, I've actually managed to capture some of my favorite photographs where usually I would have left one of my big, bulky, full frame cameras at home and never got the shot. I'm just going to take a quick minute to let you know that today's video is sponsored by Tessan. Now, as photographers, we all love to bring our equipment with us when traveling, but we've got enough to pack in our backpacks without having to worry about bringing a bunch of adapters and plugs and messy cables too. And that is why I've been loving Tessan's new universal adapter that offers safe, compact and convenient charging no matter where you are in the world. The design of this thing is just so awesome. At the flip of a switch, you can change the plug type to fit whichever local socket you need, such as UK Type G, Europe Type C, and China and Australia Type I plugs, offering a single, compact and lightweight solution for your travel charging needs. And of course, the adapter allows for the conversion of US, UK, EU, and Australian plugs, meaning it's just perfect for airports, hotels, and more. This 65-watt unit also has 2 fast charging USB Type-C and 2 USB Type-A inputs built into the adapter, which means you can leave your extra chargers at home. This handy little unit has really cut down on the amount that I have to pack in my travel bag. As you can see here, I'm charging 2 cameras, my phone, and also 2 battery chargers using just this single travel adapter. The USB-C 3 port is also fast charging, which is perfect when you're on the move and need some extra charge fast. The 65-watt version I have here also utilizes GaN technology for even better performance. Now that I've used this adapter on a couple of trips now, I really don't think that I could go back to traveling without it. It's just so small and lightweight, it will easily fit into your camera bag or suitcase. The model I have here is the 65-watt version, but Tessan also make a 15-watt version, a 35-watt version, and even a 100-watt version of this unit. The 35-watt version of this adapter even includes an extra USB-C port, giving you 6 ports in one, so whether you are just charging your headphones or your MacBook Pro, Tessan has you covered. So if you want to learn a little bit more about your new favorite travel companion, check out the link to Tessan's universal travel adapter in the description of this video. Alright, onto the cons list, and con number 1 is the lens. I have a feeling that this lens is holding this camera back a little bit. It's the same lens that was on the X100V, so despite that jump from 26 to 40 megapixels and on an APS sensor, that is a really demanding sensor size. there's not been any optical improvements made by Fujifilm to the lens. And I think that this was a mistake because despite that jump in resolution from 26 megapixels to 40 megapixels, I've not seen anywhere near the kind of improvements in image quality that I would have expected. This camera doesn't crop any better than the 26 megapixel X100V in my experience. I really wanted to see a bit more crispness and retention of fine details in heavy crops, but it's just not there. I compared the two cameras, the X100V and the 6, side by side in a previous video, and on that video you can find raw files if you want to download those and check them out for yourself. As I've spent more time with the X100VI, I've just come to the conclusion, to be honest, that it is just really hard to see any kind of image quality improvements over the X100V. And to be honest, I got a lot better performance out of, say, the Fujifilm X-T5 and the 27mm 2.8 prime lens when I used that combination. And that is what leads me to believe that it's the lens that's holding this camera back from its full potential. So yeah, I do wish we saw some improvements to the lens with the X100VI. It's still also not great in backlit situations. It gets washed out very easily. So overall, I think Fujifilm missed a good opportunity there. And con number 2 is the autofocus. The autofocus in the X100VI is a little weird to work with right now and is very erratic, for lack of a better word. When I heard that the X100VI was going to have some autofocus improvements, I was really excited to see how good those improvements were going to be. But despite those apparent improvements, I've unfortunately not really seen any improvement in the amount of keepers that I get when out shooting with this camera. I certainly do see some improvements on the software side of things. The camera does tell me it's tracking really, really well. The box is in the right place and it tracks faster than the V, no doubt, but I just don't see the benefits in the end results. I found it to be really unreliable in video too, where the autofocus will just say jump to the background or jump to other random subjects in the frame. I'm sure we'll see some improvements at some point, hopefully through some firmware updates, as it is early days right now, but as of right now, the autofocus is a con for me. Con number 3 is the lack of improvements to the body of this camera. Yes, I love the design of this camera, but in my opinion, Fujifilm missed an opportunity to make some improvements to it while still having very little impact on the overall great design of the camera. For example, this is a great hybrid camera, of course, we've covered this. So why not add some kind of quick switch like we have on the X-T5 to switch quickly between photo and video modes? Right now I have to go into the drive menu and take several steps to be able to get into video mode and then activate the ND filter, for example. So I'd have liked to see a quick switch that would get you into video faster and automatically enable that ND filter, for example. They also could have added a D-pad to the back of the camera. There's room for it there, and I feel like that would have been a great thing to add. But the main thing that drives me crazy with this camera is that you can tilt the screen out horizontally, but you can't tilt it vertically for, say, portrait photography. And I really think that Fujifilm could have made that improvement to the screen with the X100VI. They could have also just added an extra custom button or two, but Fujifilm largely kept everything the same and in my opinion missed a good opportunity to update some things with the body on this camera. Con number 4 is the battery. Battery life is just not good, I'm afraid. Fuji said we'd see some improvements in the X100VI, but I can't see those improvements. In fact, I think that the performance in terms of battery life is worse in the 6. You still need a fair few batteries to get you through a full day. It just drains so quickly. And as a side note also, the camera, the grip gets really hot where the battery is. And this isn't something I've really experienced with any other small cameras that I've used. But the X100VI's grip will get really hot and uncomfortable after a while, even when just shooting photos. Con number 5 is the buffer. The buffer in this camera is pretty slow to clear, and I would put it down to the larger file sizes thanks to that new higher megapixel sensor. Also, the issue with this camera is I love using it for video now, so I might be shooting a few photos and want to quickly hop into movie mode and capture a clip. But if the buffer hasn't cleared, you just can't even get into movie mode, let alone record a clip. And sometimes that buffer can take, say, 10 seconds to clear, or even sometimes I've just had to simply turn the camera on and off just to be able to get into movie mode. I've also found, as a side note, that this camera locks up on me quite a lot, it will just completely freeze and I cannot even turn the camera off. But that does seem worse with certain cards. So I really haven't figured out what's caused that yet. So that's my list, but I do want to add one honorable mention to the con side of things, and that is, of course, just how difficult this camera is to get right now. But I don't know, maybe it's getting a little bit better. Let me know down in the comments below if your pre-order has been fulfilled, and maybe when you ordered it, or let me know if you were still waiting for this camera. So overall, as a long time X100V owner, this has not been the exciting upgrade that I hoped that it would be, but it doesn't take away from the fact that this is still a really fun and engaging camera to use. The X100V was one of my favorite cameras of all time, and that will extend onto the 6 as well when I spend more time with it and make some memories with it. And also I can't take away from Fujifilm that they have really made this a legitimately great hybrid camera now. They really stepped up their game in terms of video image quality in this camera, and as a result has made it one of the best travel cameras on the market right now. But let me know down in the comments if you have any pros or any cons to share about your X100VI or just your opinion in general on my list. That's it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.